There is a very big difference between helping and saving. I can help the other. Of course, I will help them as much as I can, but there comes a moment when I must protect myself. And if, in that attempt to help, the other is dragging me toward the abyss, then I must be careful, because I do not want to fall into the abyss. There must be a boundary, which is my own personal love, and that is not selfishness at all.
Hello, dear friends of Kabbalah Podcast, once again with our friend MarioSaban.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, cheers, Mario. Excellent. Very good. Very happy to be here with you.
Likewise. For me, it is always a pleasure to be able to share this with everyone, with the others.
Yes.
That's the key, to share with others what little you know.
The good thing is that, well, we have these dialogues and we also have a good time.
And the truth is that, yes, we are in a state of ecstasy.
Well, today it's our turn to talk about the others, an apprenticeship or hell.
Well, Sartre, the great French philosopher, said the others are hell. Of course, it is a problem because I am another for others. So that means that I am also a hell. Let's see. The others are inside the tree of life, in the dimension of the Yesod.
Actively.
That is to say, the dimension that has to do with all relationships. Relationships as a couple, relationships with parents, with children, with cousins, well, with all kinds of work relationships as well. We all have a different nature of the soul. We all have our imbalances. And, in addition, we all have different levels of consciousness. Therefore, here are many challenges here. Being united with a person who does not have the same level of consciousness. Being united with a person who has certain imbalances. Being united. So, of course, people end up in many conflicts. Marital separations. Children who don't want to speak with their parents. There are hundreds of problems in relationships. Issues of themes, problems, perspectives, and the way one perceives the other. And in Kabbalah there is something that I really like, which I try to put into practice. It says that one must always see the other with compassion. And it seems to me that the first thing one should reflect upon is that we are all imperfect, that in our imperfection we can all make mistakes, and that we should have that awareness that the other can also be teshuvah, in a process of return or correction. But at the same time, we should also have compassion for ourselves and self-preservation, in the sense that if the other person is attacking me constantly, I must ultimately distance myself from this person, who today would be called toxic, and in Kabbalistic terms would be klipotic, that is, a person surrounded by klipo, who does not want to work on themselves or who cannot, but who is affecting us. So for me, within this subject, there are two main points. First, what I learn from others, and second, if the other is constantly attacking me, to withdraw for the sake of my own self-preservation. Because unfortunately there are many people who get confused. They mistake the other teaches me for a masochistic situation, for staying in that relationship. If you have learned, you leave. There is no relationship in which the other teaches you by pressuring you, by unbalancing you more than you already are. One must be very careful with self-protection as well, and this is important because love for oneself, one's own self-love, belongs to a reality of protection. We must also avoid the idea of wanting to save others. There is a certain messianic idea about others. I'm going to change them because with my love I will transform them. And yet that person may have been repeating their mother's imbalances for 20 years, and there is simply no way to change them. So the issue here is to beware of that false messianic idea that I am going to save the other. Okay, I can help the other, but not save them. It's not the same. There is a very big difference between helping and saving. I can help the other. Of course, I will help them as much as I can, but there comes a moment when I must protect myself. And if, in that attempt to help, the other is dragging me toward the abyss, then I must be careful, because I do not want to fall into the abyss. There must be a boundary, which is my own personal love, and that is not selfishness at all. Indeed, it would also be necessary to define what selfishness is and what personal love is, because people confuse them. We must understand that I did not come to save the other. I can help the other, yes, but I must save myself. I must rectify myself, and I must save myself from those who are toxic, or klipotic person, as we say in Kabbalah. So be careful, my friends. Self-protection must arise from the tiferet, from the center of the self, through a very strong binah that can protect me from those others who are ill, and who, in their imbalance, seek to unbalance us. There are people who are not right in the head. They appear, for example, on social media, and you can see that they are not well, that they should be in a psychiatric institution, but there is no doctor to evaluate their case. One must be very careful with those kinds of people who can harm you, who can disturb your life. There comes a moment in a person's life when that person desires peace, inner peace, and understands that they can help but cannot save. So what does it mean to save? It means giving much more to others than one gives to oneself. That is the klipa of chesed. So I am empathetic, yes, I help, yes, but everything has a limit. If in that act of helping I find myself being dragged down in my own personality, if I find myself being diminished, feeling displaced, even crushed by the other, no, there must be a correct self-esteem, one in which others clearly do not invade me. And then I recently heard someone say, well, my brother told me such and such. Oh, no? Well, that's your brother's problem. But what do you think of yourself? There are many people who are dragged down by others. Many people are dragged down by the imbalance of others. Those others could be an unbalanced father or mother, or an unbalanced child. Because just as there are bad parents, there are also bad children. There is not always a good child. And there are people who have a very unbalanced child who drives them crazy. And that person must help their child, yes, but only up to a certain limit, because that child must also have the strength to rectify and do their own work. We cannot replace another person's rectification or do their work for them. That is why relationships with others are so interesting, because one learns a great deal about oneself.
Well, always the other is a mirror, isn't it?
Not always. If the guy's toxic and I don't have that toxicity.
But I'm not a mirror, but it can reflect the opposite. Not only can it reflect what you are, but also the opposite.
Yes, but one must be careful with this idea that the other always reflects me. The other, if they are ill, may simply be ill and not reflect any illness within me. If the other is unbalanced, it is their imbalance and it does not necessarily reflect my imbalance. Because with the justification that the other is reflecting my imbalance, many people remain in relationships and say, I'm going to learn because the other reflects my imbalance. No, the other has their own imbalance and does not reflect anything of yours.
I understand what you're saying, but in a certain way, if you remain with a person who is, let's say, presenting you with a certain tendency, they are also, in a way, making you aware that there is something within you. There it is. Right.
What happens is that the imbalance of being with an unbalanced person is the imbalance of me being the messiah of the other, or the one who is going to help them, or of me being a masochist. That is to say, the unbalanced person has their own imbalance, and I am not responsible for the imbalance of others. I've learned this very well. That is, the imbalance that the other has does not project onto me. I already have my own to keep me entertained. Therefore, I stop the imbalance of others. Now, if I stay in the toxic relationship, which I think is what you're suggesting, if I stay in that toxic relationship, then I must look at what imbalance I have that makes me able to endure an unbalanced person.
It's the opportunity to perceive it. Otherwise, of course, you don't see anything.
I perceived it, and the next day what do?
You have to leave.
Of course I have to leave, but there lies the problem. Because if I don't leave, that is where I found the imbalance. I completely agree with you there. I found the imbalance as a result of staying with an unbalanced person.
No, but there are several concepts that I find interesting regarding this topic. The other. The first is the concept of salvation that you mentioned. For me, having gone through a training process in an institution of a religion different from my own, I realized that the concept of salvation was something used very often. And I always, when interacting with my classmates, would say that isn't there a bit of egotism in claiming that one must save the other? Who am I to save the other? Why should I have to save the other? Am I better than the other, that I must save them?
Because that is the dogmatic concept of evangelization. But I say this because it is a reality. That is, international religions, Islam and Christianity, are evangelizing. And by believing they have the absolute truth, they try to convince others of their truth, But that is a dogmatic fundamentalism, which is the imbalance of many when they claim to have this supposed absolute truth. When a person does not have that imbalance, they will not try to evangelize anyone. Someone who evangelizes another carries egotism and pride in believing they possess the truth. And no one has the truth except God. And when we seize the idea of God and want to colonize the other, we are unbalanced. No one can colonize another. Yes, there are people who want to colonize others, but this comes from imbalance. If someone comes to evangelize me, or wants to Islamize me, or make me an atheist, they want to do something to me. That is, if they want to colonize me, the person is unbalanced, because they want to convince me of something that is not my path, and my path is given to me by God, not by another person. So all of these evangelizations, these issues, stem from a dogmatic fundamentalism that Kabbalah is completely against. Every soul has its own path.
Then there is another concept that is also interesting to me, which I often talk about with my teacher, which is the issue of tolerance. The concept of tolerance is as if there is something that hurts you and that, well, you tolerate it.
The concept of intolerance is that you are intolerant.
No. The concept of tolerance, you have to be tolerant.
But there is no tolerance, there is respect.
Of course there is. No tolerance. Exactly.
The idea, I tolerate you.
I put up with them because I have no other choice. There's another thing I was thinking about yesterday regarding this topic. I was walking down the street and thinking about it. Regarding this situation of tolerating, how good it would be to think that the other, regardless of what they do, and it's always better to self-preserve, etc., the other is the solution, not the problem. That is to say, the other must contribute the solution to you, not the problem. Whether it's because you have a collaborative relationship or because they present you with something you must struggle with or work on.
It's like hiring someone and saying, I hire you to solve this for me. And the other comes with a problem. So, how did you hire them? Don't come with the problem. I want the solution. But personal relationships involve so many issues because you realize that many times inherited parental imbalances come into play. So, of course, one comes with a baggage from many generations back, with inherited imbalances as well. Therefore, there are many imbalances that sometimes are difficult to align with another person. But I'll repeat again, each individual is constantly reviewing their own rectification in order to elevate themselves. That's Tikun. But the other should do the same. Clearly, if the other does not, they remain entrenched or paralyzed in their imbalances. Someone paralyzed in their imbalances is very difficult to live with because they have created their comfort zone in their imbalances. There is also this topic, when imbalances become your comfort zone. Many people say, I am like this, I am not going to change.
Yes, totally. That's horrible.
This is something very strong. When you hear this, how could I not change? This person is dead. They died. Because change is what makes one alive. So many times I say, my God, what is happening to this person? I'm like this and I'm not going to change.
It's also totally unnatural because we were growing up, we were getting older.
The cells change, but he says that he is not going to change. It is something totally outside of nature. So you say it cannot be that zones of safety exist that are based on empathy with your imbalances. That is, your imbalances project your identity. So there are identities that are not imbalanced that are trying to stop being imbalanced. No, there are imbalanced identities that love being imbalanced. Dogmatics are imbalanced identities that love being dogmatic. That is, they are militant imbalanced people. They are militant imbalanced ones. And you say, I can't believe it. So, of course, what you cannot believe is the lack of flexibility to leave their zone of safety. And it is crazy, right? Because one wants to have the zone of safety in paradise, not in hell. So when these people decide to create their zone of safety in hell, you say, I can't believe it. I can't believe that there are people who, just to have a zone of safety, live in hell. That is, I've been with this person for 40 years. It's infernal, but I stay because I'm used to it. No. Get divorced even if 40 years have passed. Why? Because you cannot live in hell. Because God did not give you your soul to live in hell. And the purpose of the soul is elevation, never stagnation.
A waste.
It's very sad, this subject. Well, there's a culture, isn't there? Marriage is a sacrament. What sacrament? The sacrament is love, not marriage.
That's good.
Of course.
Another headline.
Love is the sacrament. That is what is sacred. And when love is over,
Of course.
then there is no more sacrament.
Give me 15 seconds, Mario, and we'll be right back.
Hey Mario, you're looking tan from the lights. What's going on with you?
I don't see you. Who are you?
Here, I am Nacho.
Oh, hey, Nacho. How are you? This light is killing me. I need sunglasses.
Listen, there's another eye watching us. There are a lot of people back there. Hey, you, over there on the other side. Give it a like, subscribe, and join us. And if you want to collaborate in a more active way, here there is a QR that allows you to help us to continue and keep doing this podcast. You also have it in the link below in the comments. And on this Patreon, you'll find an online Kabbalah course in English to help transform your life and become happier. Mario, next time?
Sunglasses. Umbrella.
Yes, umbrella.
Mario, as you say, love is the sacrament. Well, the sacred, isn't it? The
Sacred is that. Two people who are constantly arguing is not sacred by divinity.
No.
That cannot be sacralized, because if you declare a sacrament to a marriage where there is no love anymore, then you are making their marital relationship a prostitution, because they are making intimacy with someone they don't love. That is to say, to a marriage that you declare a sacrament where there is no love, you are making the two people prostituted. Very serious.
Yes.
I don't know how we got to this. We were talking about the others.
Well, it has to do with the relationship with the other.
What I'm saying, but notice that
The imbalances.
on a dogmatic level, there are many people who cannot perceive this. The infidelity to oneself that happens when someone stays in a marriage out of a kind of moral fidelity because they are inside the marriage, yet they are unfaithful to themselves because they do not love the other person.
Well, the conclusion I come to is that what we're really talking about here are ossified relationships. Relationships that don't move and aren't dynamic. Based on that premise, we should establish that relationships must be dynamic.
The entire reality of the universe is dynamic, yet we tend to believe we possess an absolute truth. I remember in the history of the Church, Father Loisy, the founder of modernism. At that time, I believe the Pope was Leo XIII, if I recall correctly, and Loisy said that dogmas evolve. And Leo XIII, I think, responded that he was outside the Church. How could dogmas evolve? Dogmas are immutable. And yet Loisy was right, because if you study the history of all our religions, everything changes, everything transforms. Therefore, the idea that nothing changes, that nothing evolves, is completely outside, as you say, both the nature of reality and the divine act of creation. Look, in Kabbalah there is a concept, the concept of revelation. Something is revealed, fine. Something is revealed, and when it is revealed, it brings something new. When the revelation of the Torah came through Moses, it brought something new. Abraham did not know it, even though the Pharisees later invented the idea that Abraham knew the Torah. False. Abraham did not know the Torah. The Torah appears with Moses. It is revealed through Moses. Something new was revealed. Later, many centuries afterward, the rabbis came and began their interpretations. And what are interpretations? Revelations of something new. New for us, never new for the divine matrix, but new for us. Thus, reality is continuously revealed, and that revelation changes reality because something new is being unveiled. Therefore, if something new is revealed, if your personality after 30 years has grown and something new within you is revealed, and if you are in a relationship and suddenly feel that the other person no longer represents you, Well, you married that person when you were 25, now you are 55, and you are a completely different person from the one you chose, and vice versa. So all relationships are dynamic, and because they are dynamic, the same applies to friendships. You can have childhood friends, high school friends, but you also change the level of relationships as you grow. Why? Because there is a dynamic. I think we must become aware of this dynamic. What happens is that fear creates dogmas, fear creates the zone of security, fear creates the illusion that there is no dynamic here. So if we begin from fear, well, that's a bad place to start. We should not be afraid because fear is a distortion of reality. So we let go of fear. Of course, we should be prudent in life, but not with an added layer of fear that prevents us from living. Therefore, I cannot fear change because things change, because that is the dynamic, as you rightly said, and with which I agree 100%, of the universe. The universe was created by the divine for change, what we call revelation. We find that we must change, we will change, we must accept our own changes, and we must also accept the changes in others, which is even more difficult. Because sometimes we also dogmatize the other person and place them in an imaginary zone of security. That is, the other is like this. But 10 years go by and the other is like this means nothing, because they must have changed. The other person cannot remain fixed in a static image of reality. We must avoid projecting fixed images onto others because everything changes within the dynamic. Neither our own image nor the image we create of others can remain static.
Well, there is also one thing that is interesting, which is that the other is neither more nor less than the other, is neither more nor less than the idea that we have of the other for us. Isn't it true? And vice versa.
Yes, there we enter into all the other issues, such as the idealization, for example, of the other, or the condemnation of the other.
I propose to you to go to a thing as more practical of the sage Hillel. That says, don't do to your neighbor what you don't like to be done to you. This is something that can be applied in a very practical way in relation to the link with the other and the relationship with the other.
Yes, what happens is that when the ego is unbalanced, it becomes very difficult. You really have to work on yourself. This is an issue of Yesod, because notice the wisdom of Kabbalah. In Yesod, it places the ego in relation to others.
Indeed.
And the great prototype we have here is the anti-archetype of Yosef. Yosef, facing his brothers, could be described as arrogant, haughty, treating them from a superior point of view, and all of Yosef's life in the text of the Torah is that of a person who must work on not feeling superior to others, to feel at the same level, and to understand that each one has the nature of their soul completely different. And until he accepts his brothers, many years pass because the brothers come to Egypt and reconciliation occurs. The reconciliation of Yosef with his brothers is not simply Yosef reconciling with his brothers. The reconciliation of Yosef with his brothers is the proof of Yosef's Tikun, the proof of the level that Yosef has reached in his rectification, because if Yosef had not achieved that rectification, he would have killed all the brothers for what they had done. He would have taken incredible revenge. Moreover, in the Torah text, there are some doubts on Yosef's part. Bring me Benjamin and do this. There are a few tests that he sets for them, where in reality, it may seem that these tests are testing the brothers, but they are actually internal tests of Yosef to see if he has completed his tikkun or if he is going to pursue revenge. There is a decision in the text of the Torah, a tension where you can see that there are doubts within Yosef. The end of Yosef's life is about seeing whether he completes his tikkun or not. You wait for his tikkun until he embraces his brothers and says, I am your brother Yosef, and he embraces them. And that is when his tikkun is completed. That is why our tikkun ends with others. Our tikkun is completed in seeing what kind of relationship we have with others.
How important are the others, right?
Yes. Our tikkun does not end in a mountain with green juice. Our tikkun ends when I am with the other, in the relationship with the other.
Yes.
And then we see what happens with the other. That is a very big challenge that all human beings have. It is an impressive work, the work of what level of aggression. The other day, I had to make a copy in a copy shop and the cashier was a bit aggressive. And then, of course, there could be two reactions. Put me in the game. or rise above it. Undoubtedly, I treated him very kindly, very well, in spite of that aggressive posture, and he was discomfited, because when you answer the conflict with love or rise above it, the other one is put off.
Totally.
Love is something that the conflict did, and then he attended to me lovingly, so he did his tikkun almost immediately. Yes, an immediate tikkun. And I'm glad he did the tikkun, because he must have reflected in those microseconds on what was happening to him.
Yes.
He was releasing a tension. There was a conflict within him, which was clearly seen on his first arrival at the copy shop. Imagine if I came unbalanced, an unbalanced person comes to him.
Yes.
That double imbalance can end in a fight. And so I continued with my loving relationship with him, and he changed. He completed his tikkun immediately, which also speaks very well of him, because probably he would not have if he had remained in the same position. These small things that you do a little in life, which are not grandiose, you don't have to give a master lecture to 200 people if it wasn't the interaction with the person who helped me at the copy shop, because in the end, even an unbalanced person has a little heart. They would have to be at a very high level of imbalance not to have that relationship. I think when the other opens their heart a little, it is interesting. What happens is that one has to maintain oneself without activating one's own imbalances and without being dragged by the imbalances of others. That is why one protects oneself first, and automatically with that protection, one can help the other. If one does not protect oneself and the other comes with conflict, since you have no protection, the conflict of the other invades you and breaks your protection. So why do we first do the self-protection? Because in relation to the other, when you are trained, the other will enter into a loving interaction. But if you do not protect yourself and the other is unbalanced, the other might drag you into their imbalance. From the point of view of Kabbalah, simply say that we must care for our Tiferet selfishly. At the moment we care for Tiferet and maintain this loving spirit, then the other, again I repeat Nacho, if they do not have too many imbalances, because they may have a level of imbalance such that even if you continue with this loving approach, they do not connect with you. But in the case of small conflicts, small daily imbalances, the other perceives their own situation of imbalance and connects with you. Therefore, the other is very important.
The other is indispensable to be able to do tikkun.
Totally.
Relationships must be dynamic, right?
Absolutely.
You have to have a loving tendency. Love your neighbor as yourself. Leviticus 18.
No more, no less.
Exactly.
Of course, but
In a
it's
balanced
difficult
way.
because there are many people who in general love others more than themselves, or love others less than themselves.
Of course.
And that point of doing it anyway is difficult. When you see someone who loves himself very much, you say, I hope you love others in the same way.
That's why people who are pernicious with others and destructive with others is because they love themselves little.
Of course, because they are already destructive toward themselves. Every being that is destructive toward others is so because their own self-destruction already dwells within them.
That's right.
Those people don't have to go into politics, because when a self-destructive person comes to power, he leads whole nations to destruction. They are very dangerous people. We have to make great psychometric tests to the people who govern us. We need to have a great deal of psychological control over those who govern us. I would already prefer artificial intelligence over the people we have now.
We're opening up one of the next topics we're going to cover in this podcast.
God willing.
See you, Mario. Thank you.
Shalom.
Shalom.